on the Townes Van Sant train, and we are rolling with one of my favorite Townes Van Sant songs. This is the one I always go back to. This is the one that I have on almost any playlist I've ever made. I always find a way to work this song in. And it's a song called I'll Be Here in the Morning by Townes Van Sant. Um, I mean, I just fell in love with this song. Like when I began to do my deep dive, in college into Townes Van Sant, into how he had influenced so many of the artists. I think I was in a really big Lyle Lovett phase too, like right around when this song popped back into my life. And so I really was into the storytelling aspect of songs. I was listening to a lot of old country again. And this one, I just like, this song was comforting for me. And this is going to be hopefully an amazing dialogue here, because you dropped a bomb on me last week that completely shatters the entire reason why I love this song. So I'm so excited to get into this. And this is the literal note that I wrote. And this is before you and I spoke about our songs. But this is a note I wrote when I decided I wanted to bring this one. I said, for me, as a kid with abandonment issues, I found this song so reassuring. Like, you can let go of control, close your eyes, I'll be here in the morning. And I found that really calming. It was what I needed to hear in a love song. It was that reassurance that I felt like I needed from a partner. And then you walk up to me last week and say, I have an interesting take about this song. You said, Jen, tell me, like, do you believe him? Do you think he's like really going to be there in the morning? I'm like, well, of course I do. It's the whole basis for why I love this song. And what did you say to me, Bryan C. Parker? What did you say?
Well, I wish that you had told me that that was your association of the song, and I would have just kept my mouth shut.
No way.
Well, yes, as my partner can tell you, I'm too often opening my mouth and speaking words. Gotten better about shutting up in my middle age. But yes, I don't believe him. This has always been my take on this song, and I don't know. I mean, there's a reference. I mean, there specifically in this song, he says the most beautiful view is the town you leave behind, is
Yes.
leaving. But I could never do that to you. You're pulling me back, and I will never leave. But it sounds to me, when you talk about like an unreliable narrator, it sounds to me a little bit like he's trying to convince this person that he's going to be there, and less like he's actually going to be there. And I think I'm having a really tough time, Jen, because it's breaking my heart that this is your association with this song.
No,
So
I love the dialogue. That's why when you said it, I was like, this is perfect, because honestly, I had never even figured into my mind. Like when you said it, that's why it was like so mind blowing, is I
yeah.
was like, it never once occurred to me that we could potentially be dealing with an unreliable narrator, or with a character that was much like Townes Van Sant was in life. How many
Exactly.
wives did he have? 4.
Exactly.
And like his last one was like a not a mail order bride, that's not right, but like a pen pal in
Yeah.
Germany or something, like. So it's funny that it never even like crossed my mind, knowing the story of him,
Yeah.
that this could be a situation where perhaps he was trying to convince this person.
And I think that's the artistry of the song for me. And so I mean, it's a beautiful song regardless. On last week's episode, we talked a lot about Townes Van Zandt as a wordsmith,
Yes.
and just how talented he is at song craft and writing and structure and language. Just incredibly gifted. And so it does stand, if this isn't true, but I think the deepest level of artistry of this song, what makes it one of the most amazing songs to me, is how much you're convinced as a listener listening to him. But really, that's just not it. And he's painting this portrait. The sort of detail, the truth is in there. It, like, if you tease it out, like he's saying, the most beautiful side is the town you leave behind, and it's a song where he's convincing you I'll be here in the morning. But we have all seen movies, right? Like, think about this cinematically, right? You go to bed, dude's not going to be there. Like, dude is out the window for sure. And I think that absolutely is the case here. And I think it is, in some ways, is biographical and is about this difficulty of staying put. with people that, I don't know. I mean, it's so hard. I think there's been a real reckoning of songwriters and of male behavior over the last 5 decades to 6 decades of music here. Um, and so, not to make excuses, but I think that, yeah, the Towns Van Zandt certainly struggled with the difficulty to stay in one place, a restless guy, and I think there are a
Yeah,
lot of reasons for that, of course. And so, but I don't believe him. I think that we've got a guy here who's convincing. But the song is so convincing. I think that's the
it is.
thing, is it's a beautiful song, and it is relaxing in this way that's so soothing. But I think that the interior narrative here is that he is convincing someone to fall asleep so that he can bolt. Yeah.
So that he can peace out.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because you keep referencing about him, the leaving a town behind and how fantastic that is. And the line that always stuck with me is the line that convinced me, the line that sold me that he wasn't going to leave is the line where he says, "But your softest whispers louder than the highway's call to me." And so it was like, finally, like she locked him down, like finally, this person is the one who drowned out the highway calling him. Um, but I see your point as well in terms of like, I don't know, is he really going to be there in the morning? So it was fun. Like the fun thing for me was to take a song that I've known, that I've loved for 40 years, and think about it completely differently. How often do you get to do that with things? Like, I'm down to shift my worldview about a song. Like, that just means the song's that much more magical. It holds so much more when you can do that. And I say it a lot, but it's something that I love so much about music and people that love music and having conversations with those people, because it really is enlightening in terms of the way people hear things and see things and the lines that resonate and the intention behind a song and the way a story is interpreted. I think that it's so cool to me that music can do that. Many art forms can do that, but music does it in a way that's really visceral for me. And I think that, you know, people say that one of the most magical elements in art is that its meaning is like left to the beholder. And I can get behind that, but I also must assign
Meaning,
meaning
yeah.
generally,
Well, you were on the precipice of me boring your audience to death, so let's be careful. But like, probably my longest standing sort of philosophical take from being an English major is this idea of reading, whether it's a song or a poem or literature or whatever, sort of against the grain or with the grain. And like a with the grain reading would be like reading what's on the page. You believe what the author tells you.
Yeah.
And it's like a postmodern literature is really what came along and upset this idea. But even Roland Barthes, who's a postmodern author, talked a lot about reading with the grain versus against the grain. And reading against the grain would be applying these sort of lenses to reading. Like, well, let's read it from a feminist perspective, or let's read it, from a postmodern perspective, or whatever. Let's kind of upset the narratives of what we're supposed to do with this reading and challenge it. How reliable is this narrator? What's this dude been up to?
Yeah.
These kinds of things. And Roland Barthes, who wrote Death of the Author, which is, this concept of disassociating the author from the work. And I think some of being suspicious of this song probably does depend on looking at Townes Van Zandt's life and thinking about what it looked like. So this
Yep.
is very boring stuff, I'm aware, but I think it's important to thinking about this song. I think the other thing I'll add about this song, this is really interesting. I mean, what you said, I think, is interesting in terms of artistry. What I think for me, the deepest level is how it is supposed to be convincing, but there's an ulterior narrative. That's the artistry
Mhm.
for me. But you can also look at it from this perspective that what's so masterful about it is you just don't know. You're falling asleep, and do you believe him or not? And so the song is sort of a question more than it is a story. It's an idea where you have to answer whether or not you believe him, which is pretty fascinating. And the last thing I'll say about it, which I can't tell if it's supremely uplifting and optimistic or supremely depressing and pessimistic, but believing someone is really all we have, because there actually is
Yeah.
no guarantee. You tell your partner like I'll be home later, and you just don't know that for a fact. I mean, you probably will statistically, and you plan to, and you hope to, but you have no idea what happens when you walk out the door, and you have no idea what happens when you wake up and go about your day. And so, in a way, belief is all we have. We have to kind of have that, or we don't have anything, because all that exists is the present. There's no guarantee for another
Yeah.
moment. So that I think that's an interesting component of whether we believe him or not. Is that's just what life is.
Yeah, it's true. You have to put it out there. And especially, I would say, like, no greater risk than when you're deciding whether or not to love somebody, like that's when you have to trust maybe the most. And so I do, and you do still want to engage your gifts of discernment and all of those other things, and still that feeling of love is so powerful that it can make people with tons of common sense throw it out the window, and I think that's why, again, I would love a song like this. I know about Towns Van Sant. I know the kind of life that he led, and I still can put that aside and love this song and believe him.
Yeah,
Like it's so interesting, and I do always love to have the conversation about separating the art from the artist, and it's a challenging one. And we sort of agreed early on with the show that we kind of wouldn't shy away from it. If there was an artist that we liked and they are for some reason, problematic now, let's have the conversation about that. Let's talk about why, you know, an Eminem song is not great these days for the words that he's using. Or let's talk about why maybe I don't want to listen to Ryan Adams with the same ears that I used to,
yeah,
knowing what kind of a guy he is.
yeah,
Or do I? Like, I love the music so much that I can separate it. It's like you said, it's such a hard question. And
yeah.
so
People are
that'll also be another episode, but
It'll have to be another episode. I'm gonna force your listeners to go back to last week and listen to last week, because I'm gonna go full circle on you for one thing I almost mentioned and then didn't, so now I will. But or Steve Albini, who died this week, and
yeah.
I won't get into it here, and you can do your own homework if you don't know about Steve Albini, who
Yes.
produced Nirvana and many other amazing artists that you've heard. Just a revolutionary producer.
Yes.
But yeah, or someone like Steve Albini. And so I think it's a good conversation. The interesting thing about Steve Albini is all the way back to last week when you asked about kind of what do you prefer or whatever. For me, it's process. Like I think that's what's cool and what I respect about it. Steve Albini had this really good quote, which I've done my own wrestling with Steve Albini this week. But yeah, it basically his quote was about process. He was like, he famously like did not take royalties from artists. So where it was
Oh.
common for a producer to like take a point or a point and a half or something and continue to get paid when they produced a Nirvana hit, he was
Mhm.
like, I'm not going to do that, which it was 100% principle. He was kind of famously anti-capitalist, and but he just said, I'm not going to do that. And he was like, I want to, for me, it's about the process. It's not about getting paid. It's about doing the work. It's about showing up every day and doing the work. And I feel like that's a work that's something that's kind of defined my career. Like whether it's the blog or the book or even the work I'm doing now at Austin Monthly, um, it's what are we doing today? How are we moving it forward today? There's an end game sort of for sure, but a lot of it is about the daily work, like hands in the soil. Let's get to work and really do it. Yeah, it's not about sort of resting on our laurels. And yeah, I don't know how to bring us full circle back to Towns Van Zandt, but I have created a rabbit hole for your listeners into last episode. So
It's perfect. If my listeners love one thing, it's a rabbit hole. I hear that a lot. I send them down many of them. But speaking of, I mean, I think it's a nice segue into that. We're going into, again, talking about a person that I would imagine, I've not read this anywhere, but I would imagine that Sam Beam is a person that loves the process. And so that puts us to our final track of my picks. And this is a song I have been dying to talk about for 4 seasons. And I just had to have the right person on to talk about it. And by that, I didn't mean it. I needed to have another person that loved this song. I needed to have a person that loves lyrics, that loves writing, that loves um, a really witty or really clever turn of phrase. Like that's who I wanted to talk to about. And one thing I've been saying, being around writers has been so much fun for me because writers are great conversationalists. I was a public relations major, but that was in the School of Journalism. So I spent a lot of time around journalists, and I just found myself so fascinated by writers. And then when I was in Los Angeles, screenwriters were always my favorite people to talk to. Like, it's just so great to have a conversation with people that deal in words for a living. It's one of my favorite things. So that's why I thought this song, like, you're the right guy to talk to this song about. And the song is The Trapeze Swinger by Iron and Wine. This is a song that came out probably 2005-ish. It was actually written. They commissioned Sam Bean to write this for a movie that kind of came and went. It's a movie called In Good Company, and it's a decent movie. It's an early Scarlett Johansson movie. Topher Grace is in it. I'm a big Topher Grace fan. Dennis Quaid is in it, and it's worth a watch. I mean, I don't think it's like, Academy Award winning, but it's kind of a decent movie. But really what stuck with me from this movie was this song. This song just came out of nowhere. And Iron and Wine was kind of playing around Los Angeles at the time. You could catch them at, you could catch him at small clubs in Silver Lake. Like, he would do that. He had a stint at the Will Turn a little bit later, but he was playing pretty small venues before that. And so I'd heard about Iron and Wine, but had never seen them or dug too deep. And then when I heard this song, it changed everything for me. Um, I just think that this song is poetry to music, literally. I think that he's written this beautiful poem, and then in the background, kind of like we were talking about with Beat Happening, like it's like a couple of chords. Like, there's nothing magical going on musically. It's all about setting you up to hear this story that he's telling. And there are so many different interpretations of what this song is about and what it means. And I mean, of course, there are some overarching themes that people can get behind that I think are not really very, not very veiled, but people always have an interesting take, I think, on this song. So I'm curious to know, is this a song that you knew? Is it a song that you've spent any time with? Like, how did you react whenever you saw that this was one of my picks? And did you know this song?
So I know this song. I it that remember me sort of line, is
Hmm.
really memorable. And the delivery of it. Um, the I think I mentioned to you when I heard that this was going to be one of your picks. I mentioned to you I had a decent Sam Beam Iron and Wine story.
Yes.
But Iron and Wine is Creek Drank the Cradle came out in 2002,
Hmm.
which is his debut. And this is really right around the time that I was discovering all of these K Records bands. So if you want the full segue back to Beat Happening, Iron and Wine, Creek Drank the Cradle came out on Sub Pop, or maybe was
Yeah.
was was released and then it might have been like self-released or something, and then Sub Pop picked it up really quickly and re-released it
Yeah.
immediately. I think that might have happened. This is literally going off memory, doing no research. So either like pat myself on the back, good job for me remembering, or also I am wrong and ignore me. But I think that might have happened. Anyway, Creek Drake the Cradle came out on Sub Pop, 2002, I think. This is right around the time. So I mentioned the microphones, which we're gonna have to do the Spoon episode. Then you have to book me for the microphones. But I'm coming back to talk about the microphones at some point, which I think I would argue are one of the most important bands ever. But
I
um,
would love.
yeah,
Yes.
sounds good. But anyway, that was their sort of really seminal album, the album that propelled them to sort of more notoriety and was named Pitchfork's best album of the year in 2001. And I have a lot to say about that too. So many digressions. I'm so sorry, listeners. But
We love it.
the point is that was released in 2001. This was really the era where I was really discovering a lot of K Records music and Northwest music. And I more or less lived in the Northwest for like a month while I was writing this book. I don't know if you can call it living there, but I was staying at a friend's apartment in a neighborhood, like very much like living the Pacific Northwest life for a while. And this love affair with Northwestern music got me to where I was going there every year for festivals and every year to see friends. And I've been there more than anywhere else in the country. And so Iron and Wine coming out on that label, I discovered them very early. They were one of these bands that I heard right away because at that point in my life, I was just super tuned in to if Sub Pop released an album, I heard it right away, like it,
Yeah.
within days of
Same.
listening to it. Yeah, so or days of it coming out, I would be listening to it. I saw Sam Beam play on the floor, like on the same level, just standing face to face, basically, in Mohawk Indoor. And Mohawk did not have a stage indoor yet. Mohawk,
Mm.
I can't remember what year this was. It was South by Southwest. And so it must have been like 2004 or five. I think it was 2005. One of my blogs rented Mohawk and booked it and sold it out with another K artist headlining, actually, The Blow, and some other bands. But yeah, I saw this some of the songs from this record performed like shortly after it came out, just like standing face to face with the guy. And
Oh,
um, for me, Creek Dink the Cradle was amazing. We've really, I mean, folk went through a weird time. I'm gonna try to not be. Can I cuss on this podcast? I don't.
you
Okay,
can.
I'm gonna try not be extra shitty about this, but um, not the hugest fan of maybe more modern like the Lumineers sort of era of folk.
Yeah.
And so, but when I feel like that turn of the century, 2000, 2001, 2002, artists like the Decembers coming out, and certainly when you look at them in retrospect of hearing Lumineers, it's hard to listen to Decemberists or hard to listen to Iron and Wine not through the lens of Lumineers or something like that. Like I kind of
Yeah.
wonder. I mean, I think I kind of know from hearing them talk about it, kind of a Gen Z perspective of what this might be. And it's not
Yeah.
super favorable all the time. But I think at the time, it's just a thing that had not really been explored. I mean, it was more on the heels of like Elliott Smith. And I think there was an idea of
Yeah.
acoustic music and folk music that was actually very cool and cutting edge in 2002. And so when Creek Drink the Cradle came out, it was like transformative. I thought it was an incredible album, and I listened to it to death, all the time. I did continue with Iron and Wine's music, and I'm familiar with most of the discography. And I think it's really cool how actually he kind of left that behind. And there were some really jammy records and some really huge musical albums. I saw him one year at ACL where there was like an enormous band on stage, like a 16-piece band or something. It feels like I'm going off memory, but tons of
Yeah.
horns and instrumentation, and it was very cool. Um, I think like Towns Van Zandt, Sam Beam is a writer of incredible caliber and quality. He's doing something that a lot of artists are just not doing in right now. In terms of attention to lyrical detail.
Agreed. And Iron and Wine too is a band that I'm not going to listen to them like over and over, or I don't even know that I'd profess to be a huge fan. I like Iron and Wine, but they're not like a top, 10 band for me. It's for me it's all about this particular song. And there are other, I like Sunset Soon Forgotten. I like Creek Drank the Cradle too. Like that's a great album. Their early stuff, like when I first discovered them, like I think you have a special place for people that you find early and are kind of the one to introduce them to all your friends, like you kind of hold those songs sacred because you were the one that introduced people to them. So they have a place in my heart for that, but it's really about like this song for me. If I could only, if people said you could never listen to Iron and Wine again, I'd be like, oh, okay, except you have to give me Trapeze Swinger. That's the one I have to take with me. And it's funny too that, again, lyrically, it's for this song, it's of course all about the lyrics. Like you have to read it almost more than you have to hear it, I think. When you put the two together, it's kind of magic. But I think if you could only do one, reading it will suffice, right?
Yeah,
But it's funny that you called out the line about the remember me, because I actually went through like one of the biggest things or one of the best things about this song to me is the way that he goes through that cadence. So several times throughout the song, and we didn't mention this in the beginning, it's a 9.5 minute song. Like it's a long piece of music.
yeah,
This is not a short song. But he goes through different iterations and he says, please remember me for in various reasons. So he starts off saying, please remember me happily, then remember me fondly, then remember me at Halloween, then remember my misery, then remember me as in a dream, then mistakenly, then seldomly, then finally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's something for me as like a writer that's so beautiful about the way he takes you through that journey. And I like it's a funny thing to say maybe, but I'll often ask people this question too on the show, but I'll ask what song they want played at their funeral. And so I'm answering this is the song that I want played at my funeral because it's super indulgent. I want everyone to sit there and listen for 9.5 minutes for sure. Everyone's like, Jen, you can't do that. I'm like, have you met me? Of course I can. I wouldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
And I think it is. I think it really, for me, the song is about legacy. Like the way he takes you through how he wants to be remembered is like something that I maybe have been thinking about more than usual after hitting this a milestone birthday this year. Like I've been thinking about legacy, and I think that the way he sort of leads the listener down that path about how he wants to be remembered is just so beautiful. And then the other line that I'll call out, or series of lines that I just think are insane. And I this will be another one where it's hard for me not to cry. It builds up, but I'm cutting off kind of in the middle of the phrase. But he says, they went on to say that the pearly gates had some eloquent graffiti, like, we'll meet again and fuck the man and tell my mother not to worry.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so beautiful. Like, if you believe in heaven, if you believe that there's something after, even if you don't, like, this eloquent graffiti on the pearly gates.
Well,
Like,
I love the
how has nobody thought of
I love
that?
the idea that "fuck the man" is eloquent for graffiti because it's like
Yeah.
we couldn't agree more. It's the pithy, like the simplest expression of a truth you can get to.
Yes.
"Fuck the man." Um, it's really funny that you bring up that line because and I don't mean to like hijack this discussion of Trapeze Swinger at all, but Creek Drank the Cradle. So one of the bigger songs from that was the song "Upward Over the Mountain," which is
Yeah.
almost 6 minutes long. It's just shy of 6 minutes long. So also kind of an epic song. Especially, he'd built up some trust by Trapeze Swinger. This is your first record, and you have this like mid album. It's not an early.
Yeah.
It's like mid album kind of. I think it was a single for the record. 6 minute long folk song that has a part where it sounds like it almost stops. Like the music gets so quiet that it sounds
Yeah.
like it's almost the song is over. But that song is all about this guy leaving. It's like Mother Don't Worry. I have some friends on the corner. It's like,
Yeah.
this like guy slipping away from life and falling into some, presumably like drug addiction and like, being homeless perhaps. And like, I think that, it's a song about enormous tragedy. And what was incredible to me when that song came out too is it's such a sort of song about the streets and about maybe like urban life perhaps. So like, but it's a folk song and it's an acoustic song, and I think that its content was really surprising in that way. Like it wasn't the same kind of, well, actually, I mean, Townsend and Zandt, it might have some songs along those same routes where it's like a folk song, but
Yeah.
it's like heavy city life songs in a folk package, which is interesting. Um, but but yeah, that song I think is kind of a similar thing that he deals with familial strife and with the pain of like how you feel about a child, and it's some heavy stuff. But yeah, I think that his songcraft, I mean, we're talking about great songwriters on the show and a lot. But it's been incredible, and he's been really in tune with great songcraft too. Like he has a cover of New Order's "Love Vigilantes," which
Yeah.
is a song about um, dying in war and a widow getting the notice of their husband dying in war, which is an incredible New Order song from one of their earlier albums too. I think it's on Low Life. But yeah, I mean, Sam Beam is a guy who's been really interesting, and in some ways, I don't think adequately explored, maybe. But they're like diehard Iron and Wine fans. But I'm the quality of the songcraft. I think you're right. You're onto something that maybe it's been a little bit unsung. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I like it when he tries something new. I like this new duet he just came out with Fiona Apple. What's it called? All in Good Time. Really interesting and kind of different from him, kind of different for, for him to pair with a voice like Fiona Apple. And they sound really good together. It's an interesting take. So I would love to see him kind of go that genre a little bit, like kind of do a little bit more of this duetting and something that's a little bit different than like the acoustic guitar folky lyrics heavy, which again I love. Like I want to read his lyrics all day long, but I also like it musically when he sort of branches out and tries something a little bit different that doesn't feel like it's so in his wheelhouse that you're just getting the like, the hardwood floor with the carpet in front and the bench and the guitar, like
Yeah.
we've all seen the scene before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm anxious to see sort of where he'll go next, and if if there will be a departure. But regardless of what he does, I'm so happy for Trapeze Swinger and will love and respect him forever, simply because I think that that song is so brilliant. And for it to be, again, a 9.5 minute song that I never skip, that I never fast forward, that I find myself wishing was 20 minutes long, I think that that's a testament, because I'm a pretty like, I want to get in and out with the song, especially a story song. Like I want you to tell me the story and then I want to be done, and this is like you're with him on the journey. If you're listening to this song, you're sticking with it for a while.
Yeah.
So
I feel it's so funny you've opened this sort of like Pandora's box of Arna Wine songs for me, because it's just not an artist that
yeah,
not listen to this week, not this month, probably not this year. But I'm
yeah,
just thinking about Iron and Wine songs that were meaningful to me over the years, and this 2005 EP In the Rains that has uh, a couple of songs on it. So 16 maybe less. If you don't know that song
yeah.
is unreal. Like that song is very good. Um, uh, and then maybe it's not on that song. Is Jezebel? What,
I
I'm trying to remember what album Jezebel's on. Anyway, he's a great songwriter. Let's
He
suffice to
is.
say, like,
Naked as We Came. I
yeah.
think Naked as We Came is one of his
I
great
was going to bring
songs
that one up
too.
too,
That's
because
beautiful.
that moment I described on the last week, we keep throwing your listeners back. Go to last week's
I
episode,
know.
but
Go to last week.
that story I told about Holly, I think that when you think about moments like that with your partner, for people who have life partners out there and can relate to this, that song is really expertly rendered. I mean, it just hits a note of like joy. It's a simple song, it's straightforward, but it hits a note of like this long term kind of joy that's not what, anyway. I agree with you. Naked as We Came is a transcendent song that really
Yeah.
captures what it's like to feel about a life partner. Yeah.
Yeah, and all of the things that go with that,
Yeah.
and all of the feels. So yes. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for sharing what you're listening to, not 1 week, but two with me.
Well, thank you for sharing with me. This has been incredible conversation. I really appreciate you, Jen.
So fun. And we've said it on air, so now it has to happen. We will be back and we will have our spoon episode. We will have, what else do we have to talk? We have to talk about the microphones.
Microphones,
We might even have to talk about mountain goat.
mountain
Is that your
goats.
other?
Yeah,
We got to talk about mountain goat. So there's a lot for us to do.
we'll do it.
So listeners, to learn more about Bryan and read his work, you can pick up the latest issue of Austin Monthly Magazine, or you can follow him on socials at Bryan C. Parker. That's Bryan C, the letter C, Parker. As always, be sure to follow, download, and share this show. And if you love listening, drop us a review on Apple or Spotify. Last but not least, to stay informed on all things Super Awesome Mix and what are you listening to, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Super Awesome Mix. Thanks for listening, and please join me again next week to find your new favorite song.